Who decided to withdraw the intelligence? And the original?
I'm sure it then went upstairs.
The original intelligence had gone directly to the Prime Minister in September 2002, just before the dossier was published, although it wasn't reflected in the dossier. Do you recall that?
So I understand. Let me emphasize, I had no direct involvement at that period. So what I understand is what I have heard since or learned as part of the Butler inquiry.
Review of the case didn't extend as far as reviewing how the intelligence was used when it came in September 2002, when it first came in.
We knew what had happened to the intelligence. The question is,
what did happen to the intelligence?
Well, you were describing it to me, that it went to the Prime Minister and so on. My job was to validate.
How did it go to the Prime Minister?
I don't know. I had no direct involvement.
What I want to know is whether your researches showed you how it had gone to the Prime Minister and whether your usual procedures for checking intelligence before you put it to a very high level had been followed in this case.
No. My job. That was part of a sort of review, if you like, for Butler. But my role at this point was entirely about validating the case, and I had no direct knowledge of what had happened previously.
That's for others. Okay. Now, on the validation of the case, do you recall how quickly the withdrawal of the case was communicated to the Prime Minister?
We withdrew the reporting, the 3 reports, on the 29th of July 2003.
When you looked into the case, discovered that it was invalid, what conclusions do you recall drawing about this case as a whole?
Well, I think it illustrated, first of all, the dangers of a chain of sourcing. So that's one point, obvious enough, and obvious enough in relation to as well. So you need to be extremely careful with those chains of reporting. The second point is that when you have senior people who reach down into the machinery and try moving the cogs, if I may put it like that, I think you end up with you obviously disenfranchise the operational chain of command. You cut out expertise, and perhaps you also disable that element of challenge which is, I think, a very important part of operational life in the service. The third point is there was a judgment which I learned about, I would say, in mid-2003, but I was only aware of the authorship of it this year, that we had overpromised and underdelivered. I absolutely agreed with that judgment. It's precisely what we did.
Thank you. That's very clear and concise. When you refer to senior people, which people are you referring to? Within the service or?
No, I meant within the service. Again, I had no. I'm operating on hearsay. So I think.
You were a senior member of the service. You have talked about senior people reaching down into the cogs of the machine.
Well, it was the chief at the time, and that was well known. But the point I'm making is that at the time I had an inward-looking role. I had no. It's hearsay. It's what people said.
It's a bit more than hearsay because you have made some, I think, entirely professional remarks about the way in which it was handled, and within the privacy of this room we respect that. But we do need to have a clear understanding ourselves of how this went wrong.
Yes, and it was controversial at the time.
Yes. It caused some disquiet among senior members of your service, the way it was handled.
Well, disquiet, if you like. One of those Whitehall words. At a senior level. I think rather more at an operational and working level.
Well, let's be less Mandarin-esque about it. By rather more.
I think people were genuinely annoyed and concerned.